welcome to Steph on Skills, powered by Enginuity. So, as you know, this podcast is all about introducing you to loads of fabulous people and chatting about their experiences in science and technology, engineering, maths, whatever it is that gets them going in that area of life that we need loads more people in, because there's tons of jobs there which we love talking about. And my next guest is a brilliant example of someone who's smashing it in the industry. Ruth Amos is part of loads of, do you know what, if you've got kids you'll know who she is. So she presents this brilliant YouTube show, Kids Invent Stuff, and as the name suggests, she is an inventor, a maker, an all-round like STEM advocate. You kind of love making stuff, don't you, Ruth?
Love it. Yeah, that's my thing.
That's your thing. Tell me how you got into it then.
So I accidentally became an inventor. So when I was at school, I wanted to be a lawyer. I'd be a terrible lawyer.
That's all you hear when you're young, isn't it? Doctor, lawyer, teacher.
Do you know what? I think I wanted to be paid to argue people. Like, I wanted to be a barrister in court.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I was set an invention challenge by my teacher.
Yeah.
And it was part of my GCSE resistant materials project. Ended up inventing something called the stair study. Was Young Engineer for Britain for it back in 2006 and got thrown into this whole world of like engineering. And I was like, why has no one told me about this? I started to meet these amazing women who had the most awesome jobs. And I was like, where have they been hiding them?
Yeah.
And so it became my mission. And the more work that I did, the more I realised that what I really enjoyed doing, what I was really passionate about, was showing young people how amazing engineering, inventing, making is. And I'm kind of on this like little mission to be like, I know not everyone's going to end up as an inventor, but I would like every single young person to know that it's an option.
Yeah, and everyone's got an invention in them, I reckon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kids. I mean, I'm not just saying this, but kids have the best inventions.
Because they're not squashed by life and like safety rules and risk assessments and everything else. So they just think much more broadly, don't they?
Definitely.
It's so interesting that that's your story, because I kind of had a parallel entry into engineering as well. But whereas you didn't know about all these kind of different engineering things, my school was really focused on getting us to understand all the engineering stuff. So all that you mentioned, young Engineer for Britain, so I won that 5 years before you. That's random, isn't it? But and that was because of work I'd been doing at Black & Decker. And that came about because at school we were really like, our school was massive into industry and loved telling us all about the different engineering companies. So I felt like that was the best place for me to make money. So whereas you were like, lawyer, I want to go and argue, and that's where you make money, I'm like, oh, that's where all the jobs are. And so it's just interesting, isn't it? And I think a lot of people end up in their jobs by accident, don't they? And if we gave people more accidental engineering and science stuff, they'd realise it's really fun.
I think as well, my school got really excited. So I grew up in like an ex-mining town.
Yeah.
And I suddenly came into school and was like, oh, I want to go to Cambridge. And I think my school were just like, oh my word, amazing. And so they were very much encouraging me down that route.
Yeah.
And then when I discovered engineering, and I was like, oh, and I actually never went to university, started stair study, ran it on my parents' dining room table, and kind of entered the world of engineering that way. And I think that was a bit of a shock for a lot of people, because they expected me to go off and go do a degree and all of that.
But there are loads but this is my biggest beef. Like, not everyone has to do the same route, because not everyone learns the same way. Or, you know, everyone's got different things that they're good at and different ways of, you know, learning stuff. So therefore we shouldn't just try and squash everyone into the same mold. It's like, you shouldn't be apologetic about not going to uni. It should be like, what I took from what you said there was, oh my God, she set up a business and an invention from her parents' table. Like, tell me more about that.
Well, I suppose it came from a bit of stubbornness. So I designed this product to help my teacher's father go up and down the stairs. And as part of the Young Engineer for Britain competition process, I ended up kind of having a rough prototype. And when I won the award, it got a lot of press. Yeah. And so people wanted the product. And there were lots of these stories of previous winners, amazing projects being shelved by companies, whatever. And I didn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
I'd already started the patent process protecting it. And I just thought, I don't want to do it like this. I had some very high values and morals around the way that I wanted to do it. And I thought, do you know what, if I do it, then at least I'll start that groundwork and I'll do it the way I want to do it.
And own it all as well. Then you get control.
Exactly. And so I kind of set off very naively, didn't know anything about it, never studied business, didn't know what a VAT return was, and just bit by bit thought,
again, we should be doing that at school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it kind of, and there were lots of things that I learned later on about myself. So as an adult, I'm dyslexic, and no one ever picked up on that at school because I've got a really good memory.
Yeah.
And so I just managed to not play the system, but no one really.
Yeah,
I
you
didn't
worked
struggle,
away
so
to,
no one was
to
like,
learn.
"Oh."
Yeah.
But as an adult, and obviously starting a business and trying to work out how do you navigate all of that.
Yeah.
I found that actually being neurodivergent is a real skill because I often see things very differently.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, this was always, I should have always wanted to be an engineer and inventor. And there's like a sliding doors moment where I just think, imagine if I wasn't. The first time I had to get someone else to write a contract for me and I saw what actually someone within being a solicitor or whatever did, I was like, I'd have hated that.
Yeah.
And I could have ended up in that profession. And I'm so like determined that I probably would have just forced myself to do it. Does that make sense? And I
it's
think
like serendipity. I think you would have got there anyway eventually because you would have maybe.
I don't know. I've met someone who we've literally had the same career, but she went off to be a lawyer, and now she runs like a STEM club.
Right.
And I was just like, I feel like I very nearly had your career, and I'm really glad I had mine.
Yeah. So then, tell me about Kids Invent stuff. Then, how did that come about?
So when I won Young Engineer for Britain, I started to get involved with a lot of kind of engineering education outreach stuff, and I had that passion to be like, every young person should feel like they understand that there is a place within engineering, science, whatever it is. There is a role within them if they want it. And I started to work on lots of other people's projects, but I started to feel like we were missing something. So a load of research came out. There was a piece of research around YouTube, which makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
But it was at the point where I think it was the first time more young people were watching YouTube than kind of normal telly.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, wow. And then the second one was this piece around when young people form their opinions around careers, and it happens super early, particularly for girls. It's like 6 or 7. So at primary, they're forming these ideas around what they can and can't do. And if they've started to form those careers, it is so much harder at secondary, at university, when they're in a career. And so me and my friend Sean kind of sat down with those 2 bits of information, and we were like, I feel like there's something there. And it took us a while, went back and forwards over lots of different things. And then we settled with Kids Invent stuff and like, right, we set up a YouTube channel. Primary age children, so 4 to 11-year-olds, send us their invention ideas as pictures or videos, and we'll bring one to life. And we'll build one every month. And we started that back in 2017, and we've now brought to life over 100 kids' invention ideas.
Wow.
We get about just over 1 million views every year, and we see about 10,000 students face to face. So this whole thing has kind of spiraled out of control.
In a brilliant way.
Yeah, with the whole idea of being like, get them really excited. Because when you say engineer, you can ask 4 people what an engineer is, and they'll all give you different answers.
I think that's right.
If you say inventor, they talk about creativity, problem solving, all the skills we know engineers need.
Yes.
But it doesn't have the same, I don't know, oh, my dad says I can't be an engineer because it's just fixing cars, or, like, I'm a welder, and so it does annoy me when people are like, oh, no, that's not a proper engineering, you have to have a degree, or whatever. There's both sides of that scale. And so I think there is that whole PR thing around what engineering is.
You're so right. If you say inventor to someone, it sounds glamorous. If you say engineer to someone, it sounds dirty. And that's fundamentally the problem. Here it's like a branding issue.
All you're competing with is Doc from Back to the Future. And I feel like that's a much easier battle to win than if you think about decades of what engineer has meant to people.
And tell me about the inventions then. So you've done like custard guns and all kinds of stuff.
Anything that's messy or fun or ridiculous. So we've built popcorn firing doorbells, 7-foot dinosaurs that mop the floor, carrot cars that fire at wild seed. We just did a collaboration with Taskmaster Education and the Intellectual Property Office where we built Alex Horn a drivable bath that poops out ducks and fires tasks. Like, genuinely, I have the best job ever.
Yeah, and you're right about that creativity thing, because I think as well, as you've said, you kind of get segmented at school, don't you? And you get told you're arty and creative, therefore you're going to be good at English and drawing and all of that. And then if your science is like, okay, you're technical and you're scientific and you'll be good at maths, you won't be good at English probably, or languages or creativity. And it's so not true.
No.
Like, if you could see the application more, I always think, in schools of how all those things merge in different jobs, you can do a bit of everything.
Oh,
and you don't have to be brilliant at any of them, really.
No.
If you're just all right.
My friends get very annoyed because I'm always like, I'm just average. If you just average at a few things, you'll be fine.
I totally agree.
You don't have to be
spectacular.
spectacular.
Built my career on that.
You don't have to be spectacular at anything.
Yeah.
Just be vaguely average and you'll be great.
Yeah. And also, it's a lot of it as well is just about having a go.
Yeah.
And I think that's what inventing is as well. In terms of how you think about inventions, you also think about you can fail and that's all right.
Yeah. We always fail.
Yeah.
And we try and show that. I think it's really important. Every single thing we've built, at some point, something has failed, either spectacularly or, and I think that's part of that process. And it's so nice to give yourself permission to do that.
Yeah.
But it's also, like, Sean and I are not the best engineers or inventors. We look at the kids' drawing and we work it out. And do you know what? Quite often, we don't have a clue. We're Googling it. We're finding it. When we first started Kids Invent Stuff, I hadn't picked up tools in years. And it was just my thing of like, right, we'll build this. We'll have a go. I learned so many random things and talked to you about, programming through to fabrication. But I wouldn't ever say, oh, I'm this. Do you know what I mean? It's more just little bits of skills along the way. Googling.
Yeah.
Quite happy to fail.
There's an interesting element of how YouTube has really changed education as well. Because now you can learn anything from YouTube, can't you? I mean, like the other day, right, I was in the hotel and I did not know how to work the air conditioning. And then I just went on YouTube and found, I don't know what he was called, Adam from Fujitsu, who happened to know, that air conditioner. And then I sorted it. Similarly, the other day with my car, there was something I needed to do and I just went on YouTube. And so in a way, that's what you're doing for kids, you and Sean. And in a way, it feels that's where kids are getting a lot of that useful education from, without making this political about what happens in schools. I do still think now the stuff that young people are enjoying the most and learning from the most is stuff they're watching and learning from online.
I think as well, it kind of gives people permission to be interested in something that's quite niche. So there's every content you can imagine on the internet. And when I was growing up, I felt very much like you fitted into a certain thing, you liked a certain thing. Whereas now, you can have a young person that's growing up watching very niche content, maybe, someone that's making guitars or that's really interested in a particular sort of science and engineering. And I think, like, how awesome is that?
Yeah.
That not only can you learn all of this stuff from the comfort of your own home or wherever you are, but also I think it's that permission for that kind of lifelong learning of like, actually, you don't leave school knowing everything. Actually, you can carry on learning and developing those skills.
That's, because too often we think education ends at whatever, 16, 18, 21, whatever the point is, you finish that kind of formal education. And it really doesn't, does it? Like, I mean, I imagine I learn new stuff every week. And I'm always like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. How have I got to 42? I can't remember how old I am. 42, that's how old I am. How have I got to 42 and I didn't know that. And that shouldn't be shameful. That should be actually that's fine to learn a new skill. Like, I was talking to a woman who was working for a train manufacturer and she was doing all that, up in the northeast, building trains. Before that, she worked as a hairdresser, and it turned out, and you'll understand this, she is really good with her hands. So she had real dexterity in her hands for doing fabulous hair, but also that meant she was really good at wiring the trains up. And she wasn't doing as well in the hairdressing, ended up, I don't know who told her she would be good at this. And yet you wouldn't have thought that if you'd said to... And there's probably people who are making trains now who are like, you'd be also a good hairdresser. Did you know that? What?
Well, but this is it. I think there's a lot of those transferable skills. And having, I have my own workshop, I build stuff in there. And I make people go, oh, I couldn't do that. And I'm like, do you cook? Because there's there are very similar things that you would find. Yeah. Like, for example, a Dremel that I use quite a lot. If you're a nail tech, you use a Dremel.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different things that actually, in careers that seem to be mostly female-led, you can actually twist that. But actually, no, because you could do that, you'd make a really good welder. I remember someone telling me when I was 16, like, girls make the best welders, because
Yeah.
it is that whole thing of being able to be good with your hands and to, you know, having that eye for that
Precision
detail
and
and
everything.
precision.
Yeah, there's another episode of this show which you can go back and listen to, actually, where we meet Melanie Stewart, who's a welder. Funny, she emailed me the other day, and the email subject was weldy spice, and I was like, I love that she's called herself that. Mel is like in her late 40s now, and, you know, was talking to us about how difficult it had been to be a female welder, and, you know, how things are changing now, and that type of thing. But what do you think we do about it? Because the stuff you're doing, amazing, that's really tangible, useful stuff for kids. But what else do you think we could be doing to just try and change that mindset?
Well, I think there's lots of different things. I think it's about, there isn't a silver bullet. There isn't just one thing. And I think it's about kind of joining forces almost.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's lots of research around science capital, which is essentially the more experiences a young person has within STEM, then the more likely they are to go into a STEM career.
Yeah, which is pretty obvious. Yeah.
I mean, I come from an area that is very disadvantaged. And so my thought is, a lot of that relies on parents or your school being particularly good at that. So how do we reach those young people who maybe haven't had those opportunities? And for me, that's where YouTube came in. That whole idea of social media, you can reach all those people that maybe don't have the best teacher or don't have the best opportunity. I think as well, there's a lot around just, I mean, for me, I will just take any opportunity to do something that I think is like, oh, I wrote a kid's book, and I'm like, 7-year-old me would have loved that. Do you know what I mean? And it's that sort of thing of like, how do we change that perspective? And I think it is about, there are some amazing people within this industry who are doing awesome things, and part of me is like, it'd be, you know, really great for them to shout about it. But unfortunately, a lot of those people are maybe, you know, they're women, maybe they're, you know, coming from the minority, and it's almost like adding extra work and saying, you know, we would love you to do something, to talk about what you do, but it's adding more work on the people who are working the hardest within this industry. So I think it's really tricky, and I think that's where industry and government and education come in. And, you know, one thing we found within Kids Invent stuff is, you know, money. Yeah. Putting money into something.
I totally agree with that. Do you know what? People really shy away from ever saying that.
Yeah.
But what fundamentally...
Oh, no, I won't.
Good. What fundamentally started me off in engineering was there was loads of money around for women. I was like, happy days. What, I could win $2,000 if I do this. Do you know, like, and that speaks to people. It really does. Like, there's no point pretending it's all about, you know, oh, we all want a fabulous career. Yeah, we do. But most people want to earn decent money as well.
I always get asked, like, what do you earn?
Yeah.
I think as well, it's that one of the frustrations Sean and I saw was there was a lot of money with engineering, particularly engineering engagement, but a lot of it was going to, and we'd watch it happen, projects that had been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
And maybe weren't engaging the right audience. And so you'd sit and watch something. I watched, and you know, you kind of, you know, when you just see a car crash happen in front of you, there was this girl at an event and she was doing so well, and bless him, this old retired engineer who was running the activity looked at us, oh, sweetheart, you're all right for a girl. And I was like, hold me back, like literally.
Oh, dinosaur.
Yeah. And I just think, you know, there's so many amazing projects out there, and I think that's one of the things is,
and that's just unfortunate because there'll have been someone else probably of the same age as this guy who wouldn't have said that to her and actually just treated her the same.
And this is it. And it's like, I think so often, and I always think this, we do a lot of face-to-face schools work, and I feel like they are the most exhausting days, because I also know that every single child in that room, I want them to leave being like, isn't inventing and engineering amazing? Yeah. And you feel that pressure to be like, you know, because they've all got
kids
skills.
Are the scariest audience to talk to. I was in a school this week, actually. Honestly, I get so nervous. I had to stand in front of the assembly and I was like, it could be a live TV show any day. This is really scary. But there's, I wonder if what you think about this. So I have this other point that I often make to businesses and schools and politicians, because they all say the same thing about we should get more people into schools to be role models. But fundamentally, the teachers it would be an add-on for teachers. They're not being assessed for that when it comes to, you know, Ofsted or whatever else. You know, you're also putting a lot on business to get them to be able to do it. Is it really the best use of everyone's time? And I always come back to this point of that what businesses I think often don't do is be in the space of young people. So when kids are not at school, yeah, they might be at football clubs doing whatever else, but there's a big chunk of time where they are online. And like, I really feel like businesses could capitalise on that more. You know, they could make, like, you know, support shows like yours or create other shows, again, with maybe different elements which focuses maybe in the car industry or, you know, aerospace or whatever else.
Yeah.
And there isn't enough of that. I feel like businesses often do just the corporate thing where they'll get someone who stands next to the best bit of kit and they'll look off camera and they'll talk in clipped things about, and you want to see the kind of the creativity, some sense the chaos in workplaces as well. And I feel like, I mean, what do you think on that? I just think businesses could do more to be in the space of young people and not ram it down the throat of going, come and work for this fabulous company, but more, this is a day in the life of one of our apprentices. It's real, it's raw. Yeah. You also want to know what snacks they're getting.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the canteen like, and how much money they're earning. And that reality will then bring more young people into it.
Well, I think it's really interesting because there is a real life example of how this has happened. So if you look at someone like Mo, the airport guy.
Yes.
He has revolutionised that whole industry, and the amount of young people that he's bringing into that industry just because.
Personality.
And they let him film, and he showed loads of stuff.
Yeah.
And I just think sometimes people think if we make content, they will come. And that's not right. You're fighting, you know, there's so much content out there. You have to think of like, why would someone stop and watch this content? And I think so often we get excited in industry about one thing we've got or something like, oh, people will love this because I love it. And you have to think, it's not quite, that's not how it works necessarily. And I think sometimes if people maybe didn't want to be shiny and maybe just went out there and a bit more, you know, less polished with it, found someone who just enjoys, you know, talking to camera quite casually about it, they do a lot with it. And I think there is a massive gap there. So I can't take credit for this because it's something Mo talks about, but he talks about the fact that young people spend more time on social media than they eat. And so that feed, what is feeding them, their aspirations, the way they're feeling about themselves is social media, which is why, you know, as a parent, I look at that in both a positive and negative way. However, as someone who makes content, I look at that as like, what an opportunity. If I can make content that resonates, not just on Kids Invent stuff, but on my own platforms as well. If I can make that content, if I can show engineering is fun and engaging, if I can show that actually there's so many other opportunities out there, there's, you know, all these careers, then who knows what that's going to happen, that ripple effect. And I sometimes get told like, oh, have you got another product you want to make? And part of me is like, no, because at the moment I think, imagine what those young people could design and make if they all went out there, if they all knew that they could be inventors, if they could be engineers. Imagine the difference that all of those young people would make rather than just me on my own. And I think that is more important because who knows what those people who knows what that next generation could design, think. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that for me is kind of something that kind of drives me forwards with that.
Empowering. It's empowering people, isn't it? So that they know that they could, you know, and it's also that the simplest problems are often the things that become the most popular as well. You solve something really simple and you go, how the hell has no one thought of this before? And then it's the biggest.
I was shocked.
Yeah,
I remember going home and like going online and being like, someone must have solved this. And when I got the patent, I was like, someone hasn't solved, because
for your invention.
I genuinely thought like, it was really special people that designed stuff. I was like, and I thought everything had been invented. And it hasn't.
And you know, it's funny, that thing about stuff that resonates in social media. So I have talked about this a lot, but I broke my arm a few months ago and full on, like, sorry if you're squeamish, but like snapped the bone at the top. And which is a bit mad because I slipped on the ice outside my house, very, very dull. And yet on Netflix at the moment is me being chased around the Costa Rican jungle by Bear Grylls. I didn't hurt myself on that, but I did outside my house, which is a whole other story. But coming back to this, I just did a little video of the process of healing of my arm, because the science has blown my mind. I did not know that we like grew up bones and stuff like at this age. I didn't think, and you know, I snapped it's called a midshaft humeral fracture. It's like my most searched thing on AI at the moment. Day 21 of a midshaft humeral fracture. What does it look like? But it's been fascinating because I didn't know, and sorry, I'm going to bore everyone. Well, actually, no, it's not boring. It's fascinating. So I snap my arm. What happens is a clot forms around it, and then it gets harder and harder and harder, eventually turns into bone, and then it shapes itself into arm shape, and then your job done. And I'm like, science is fascinating. So I did this little video about it, not thinking much of it, and put a few of my x-rays on, because you can now see the clot around it, and you can see it getting harder from the x-rays. Hundreds of thousands of views. And it's like, yes, people want to know more about science. You might, if you sat someone down and said, should we chat science? They'd probably go, no. But if you say, do you want to know how bones recreate themselves?
Yeah. And I think people see it as like, I mean, some of the content that does really well, I find, is things like, here's how we're going to etch something in the workshop. This is how you can, and I think, you know, so often things feel unattainable. And when you actually like break it down and go, no, this is how this thing works. And I think sometimes when it comes to things like social media, people don't want the shiny thing.
No.
There'll be people there that go, oh, I broke my arm. Oh, I wonder what.
Yes,
and I think that's it. Is actually so often we feel like we should only share the positives, and actually there's so many other bits within what we do that people genuinely would find interesting.
Like the stuff you're saying there about if things go wrong with inventions, you want to see that as well, because then it gives license to people to also just have a go. And if it goes wrong, doesn't matter. Actually, you'll probably still create great content from that. And you know, everyone talks about people, all kids now want to be either footballers or influencers. There's nothing to stop you being an influencer who's an inventor, which basically you are, and that type of or an engineer as an influencer. You can be all of it.
This is it, and quite often, because kids do what that, I want to be a YouTuber. I'm like, great, what's your thing?
Yes.
Like, what do you mean? I'm like, a lot of my friends that make content as well, like we have a thing. Like we either build stuff or we're, you know, really good at art, or do you know what I mean? There's certain things that people do, because if we all, you know, there are some people that do really well, they sit in front of a camera, they talk about their day, but actually a lot of people who make content, what they do is they have another skill, and what it's done is it's allowed them, you know, maybe they enjoy drawing really detailed maps, and it's allowed them to make this whole career off of something that you think, I was never told I could do that at school.
It's so true, isn't it? It's that action. That was always my thing to everyone was, you know, I've ended up as a journalist, broadcaster, whatever, but having engineering as my background makes me stand out big time, because a lot of people in the media don't. And when people say to me, oh, I want to be a TV presenter, I always say, what do you want to present? Like, just anything. And I'm like, no. Like, do you want to do business? Do you want to do, you know, science? What do you want to do? So it's interesting. So I'm conscious of your time, because you need to get back to entertaining all the kids, not me. Even though I could literally sit here for hours talking to you, I feel like
I don't even know what
the brunette version of me.
We should pitch that. We should pitch that to someone. I keep touching this mic. Sorry,
it's all right.
They're gonna have a lovely
and an
time.
Engineer invented this. So you know, we wouldn't even be here without it. What do you want people to take away then, in terms of, you know, because this podcast is all about it's about educating people who might be considering going into engineering, or just thinking about what they want to do next, whichever stage they are at in their career, whether it's young people or people who are thinking I might quite fancy a change. It's also just like, you know, hearing great stories like yours. But what do you want people to take away from kind of your life and your experiences?
I suppose it's about understanding that if you enjoy, you know, if you're creative, if you like problem solving, you know, if you like detail, there's so many skills that are involved in this sector, and I think so often people don't explore that for like far enough. So if you're a young person and you're thinking about what is there out there, talk to people, you know, go out there, have a conversation. It's likely as well, depending where you are, you might not, I didn't know any engineers growing up, and I think that was another thing. So if you're thinking, hang on, all of these skills, I've listened to all these podcasts and all of these things sound really interesting, I would start out there and I would start asking people for some work experience. I think one of the things that I've always found is that there isn't really a blueprint for what I do, and that works quite nicely for me, because I quite like having a go. If I have an idea, I want to do it. But if you ask for something, there is a high chance that you are likely to end up with that. So if you're a young person or you're thinking of a career change, find some people, ask. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All they can say is no. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and also I think it's always a good thing if, you know, if there's a particular company you like the look of or whatever, everyone likes if you compliment them to start with, like, hey, I think your product's really good, or I think your company's really good. I'd love to come and meet you, or yeah. And there's, as you say, so much to be learned online as well. You can literally train yourself to be an engineer.
Yeah, there's so many skills online, and there's so many things that you can like learn. You know, that I think people think they stop learning when they leave school, and you don't. You can carry on. There's so many skills to kind of bring in there. And I think if you're a business and you're thinking, oh, this is really interesting, I would start to have a look at, you know, what are you doing within your industry? What is that content that you're putting out there? Who are you trying to appeal to?
Yeah.
And I think so often lots of companies will think about graduates or maybe A-level, and they have to understand that actually some of those career kind of thoughts, some of those kind of areas that people are interested in are formed at primary.
Yeah.
And I know it's really tricky for companies to put their money into primary, but I would challenge them to maybe go into their local primary, maybe start to have some of those conversations. It doesn't have to be, oh, we're going to put loads of money into a, you know, a multi scheme or whatever, you know. Go into your local primary and start talking to young people about what you do as a business.
Or help them with projects, like give them some life, you know, I think that's what I loved at school. The local businesses gave us some real life projects to do, so we learned and
did that. And I think
did cool stuff too.
One of the things schools really struggle with is getting coaches to leave their school.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're offering to go into a school, that's what we do. A lot of our work, we go into schools.
Yeah.
And they love it. They're so excited because they're able, you know, it doesn't cost them a load of money to get a coach and take them somewhere.
Yeah.
But you can come in, you can talk to them, you can show them amazing pictures, tell them about what you do. And it genuinely, you know, you never know, you might inspire that one person and what will they go on to do?
And you, I'm sure, will have inspired lots of people on this, so thank you.
They'll have made a lot of mess, because lots of things you do are very messy.
I hear you, but that's part of the fun, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, Ruth, lovely to chat to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
That's another episode of Steph on Skills. Totally fascinating. So yeah, if you want to send us any questions, suggestions, whatever, you can send them in on the email. It's sospod@enginuity.org, and we will get them and hopefully get them answered for you. But thank you very much. That's it from us. Bye-bye.